So we'll start out general discussion. Some of these resources are places where you can download files just like the files that we've been using, but some of them use online servers. I find if I can find an ArcGIS server or a web map server or a web feature server, those tend to be kind of the best setup for me, because as information gets updated, it just automatically updates for me. It does mean that I have less control over how things might display in my map, but some of that's intentional from the server's end. They want things displayed a certain way, and it's their data, so they have the right to make those choices. But you have the advantage of getting real-time updates, or essentially real-time updates. And then there's some great resources in here for getting aerial images and things like that for free, which is fantastic. It's been changing really rapidly over recent years, and a lot more stuff is available. So I think we'll go through this ArcGIS server example as our starting place. So I showed you guys Alaska Mapper. This is one of my favorite resources for state of Alaska land management information. And generally I download those as shapefiles for the area that I'm in. They do also have a ArcGIS server that you can link to, which I think is in my list already. Oh, yeah. Here it is. So that's going to be our starting example for today. So we've talked about geodatabases a little bit. Does anybody remember how they work, what they do, what they are? Does anybody know what a database is?
The geodatabase is a way to nest information, isn't it?
Yeah, so instead of having like an individual shapefile for lines and one for points and one for polygons, you have a geodatabase. So a database is essentially just a system for managing data in a way that is linked and follows certain rules. So some of the rules are you can't have links between data that aren't controlled in a way where you don't have duplication of information. I guess I need to work on my explanation of what a database is and how it works. But essentially it's a data management system. And with a ArcGIS server, they're managing to you a package of information, and sometimes there's going to be different categories of information that are stored in different databases within the same Arc server, or sometimes you'll just have one service that has all of your layers within it. So we'll take a look at this first one. I think this is already set to open in a new window. Okay, so sometimes you'll get to a fancy splash page with a little bit more of a classic web view, but if you find yourself on a page that looks like this, you will know that you are on some sort of geodatabase server, because this is a kind of a standard format layout. And what we have here is the REST server is the server itself that's feeding out this information to us. And when we are on the services page, we can see all of the services available to us from that server. So this is a pretty powerful tool. If I add this link to my Esri connection at this layer, I will have all of these services. Now you can narrow that down a little bit by going in and say just add the open data layer, and then you would just have all of these information. And that could save potentially memory load for when you're trying to browse the different layers that are in there. But I didn't have any problems adding this just this one. So if you want to copy this link, I will throw it in the chat, but it's also in your lab, which hopefully you have open, and show you how we put that in ArcGIS. All right, so I'm gonna go to my catalog layer. Now, if you add this connection to your project, it'll be available for you for this project. But if it's a resource that you think you might use more than once, if you think you might use state land ownership information or any kind of state resource information in the state of Alaska, I would recommend adding it to your favorites. So when you go to your favorites, you will go to add a new ArcGIS server and simply copy and paste the server address. Most of the servers that are fed out to the public don't have a username or password, so don't put any information in here because it will confuse the system. And then you simply connect. So I have it on here twice. I'm gonna remove that one for sake of simplicity. But once you're connected, you're gonna see all that same information that I saw in this folder structure. So this is a helpful way when you're having problems to come back and look and see, all right, if the link that I gave you in the list, which is here, works in the web page, if it brings up information here, but it doesn't work here, then there's probably something wrong about the way that you're inputting this address. And I hopefully have given you clean enough links that you won't run into any problems with that. But if you do, let me know and I will do my best to help you. Some of them I'm still fighting myself. I noted on the Ocean Data Explorer, I can't get those to work in their latest format. I can see them online, so I know it's something that either I'm doing wrong or a permission that they're not granting on their end. So I would ask you not to use that one for this assignment until I get a chance to talk to them and figure out what's going on. Because I've run out of ideas to try on how to fix that one. So what is all this for? Well, if I want to use, let's talk about minerals today. I want to use all of the layers in the mineral estate layer. It's really just as simple as dragging and dropping that onto my map. And I now have all of the data for minerals in the state of Alaska. They won't immediately display because we're zoomed way out and there's a lot of information there. So they've given you different view layers, and still I'm not great at getting around here. Let's see, there should be some cinnabar mines near Bethel. I'm still not zoomed in far enough. Oh, it's going to embarrass me by not showing anything. There we go. So you got to zoom in far enough to find it. So here we have some mineral features, and I think it would be helpful to see where we actually are on the river here. So I'm just going to throw in some additional information. let's see, from the base layer. Oh, yep, there's the Coquim River. And I don't know if township's gonna show up in this area, but let's see. Actually, what I want to see, can't remember which layer has village names. Guess they don't default to labeling their towns. So once you get something added from, okay, so there's 2 different layers you'll see for each of these. Sorry, my computer's dealing with a lot of data right now. The first one is a map service, and the second one will be a feature service. So when they feed out a map service, it's with set styling, and you typically can't make any changes to the data from a map service, but it will load much faster than a feature service. You'll see my computer is struggling right now to deal with all the data that I have loaded. So that might be one reason to use a map service instead of a feature service. If I want to change the way something is displayed, though, I need to load the feature service. So if I want to change the symbol for the town and change the way it's labeled, I can turn on labeling for that layer. Now we can see where Bethel is. So you can see how this would be useful. I mean, I just really quickly created a map of all the mineral related properties in Bethel with just a few clicks of a button and not knowing what to expect to find there, obviously. So this is a really powerful tool to make your mapping go a little bit faster. Does anybody have any questions on how that works?
I'm still a little confused on how you synced the server up to ArcGIS.
All I did is add it to the catalog. ArcGIS takes care of everything else. So you come into your catalog, and you see I have a list of services here, and each of those I got in there just by going to add item and then adding the appropriate type of server. So there's some stuff in your lab information that tells you how you can tell what type of server you're looking at. And there's 4 different examples of the different types of just adding a shapefile, of adding an ArcGIS server, and then I think one of them is a web map server. So what I would ask you guys to do tonight is go through the lab. It goes step by step through all of that. And then the 4 examples. And then when you get to adding your data layers from this list, if there's something that you can't figure out, either don't spend more than half an hour on it and pick something else, or ask me a question. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yes.
So once you add the item or the layer into your catalog, it'll be right here. And that's the really fun part where you get to go snoop around and see, all right, what does DEC have on here? They have maps of farm leases. They have water estate stuff, which is interesting because DEC doesn't manage water estate, but apparently they look into it. And then I can't remember off the top of my head, the WELTS I think is a well management system. It's also, I find interesting sometimes to see what people have forgotten is still on their servers and going out to the world. So. If you see something that looks like this, the little toolbox here, this is a ArcGIS tool, just like we have in our toolboxes. So you don't want to probably get mixed up with other people's tools. So don't use any of these, just stick to maps and map servers and feature servers. They'll look like this. And then the pieces of them, you can see that these that show points and lines and polygons are shapefiles within this feature server. So those are the kind of things that you want to stick to. And as you saw, as I was going, sometimes I would add just the shapefile. If you know you only want one shapefile from a server, it's better to just stick to that shapefile. But if you don't know what you want to use, you can add the whole thing. But it's going to be fairly resource intensive, especially if you add the web feature service instead of the web map service. And I think I talk about that in your lab a little bit. I think I suggested for this one that you stick to the web map service. Yeah, so here's the steps for adding the connection. Here's the explanation of the difference. And then I suggested for this example that you add the map server layer, especially if you have a limited data connection. So I think for today we have enough people. I'm gonna split you up into 3 groups. And it seemed like each of the groups last time found the ask for help button within the breakout rooms. So when you're in your breakout rooms, I don't know what it looks like because I'm not in the breakout room as a breakout person, but there should be a button to flag me down if you have a question. Does anybody have a question before we get started?
So I don't know if it's just my internet connection. I've downloaded the ArcGIS server into my program and I can't get any of the data to actually show up on the map.
So you've connected to the DNR one that I just showed?
Yeah, I'm in the mapper base layers right now and I was trying to open Trail. Can't open, well, pretty much anything, but I have extremely slow internet right now.
So the trail is within the base layer?
The top base one, yes.
Let me kill some of these because mine is struggling a little bit right now. So for me, all I'm going to do is actually drag and drop. And this is the feature server. So when you start, first of all, if you just drag the trail layer, you won't have the outline of Alaska. That one lives simple coastline. So I would start with the simple coastline. So you know whether you're getting or something or not. The simple coastline should show at any zoom layer, but the trails will not. So for example, if I zoom into Anchorage, at some point I should start getting trails, and I can either keep zooming until they show up, or you can go in and look at your properties. So they're at a zoom layer of 1 to 75,000, and I'm still at 1 to 180. So I can either keep zooming in until I find some trails. There's some. Or since I loaded it from the feature server, I should be able to change that setting if it's something that they allow from their end. And I can make this at 1 to 500. And then I would recommend making them more visible at that scale. And then you'll start being able to see, oh, I've already gone back past 1 to 500,000, but if I stay under that, you'll be able to see more of those. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Did that solve it for you?
It's still loading. I have pretty bad internet right now, but I think I can figure it out.
Okay, you might want to stick to the web map servers then and just live with the styles that you get.
Sounds good.